All right, I'm going to try to knock out another one of these before the next thunderstorm comes rolling through. Yay, summertime. So, on this shelf of my continuing exploration of my collection here, I'm going to start here with Tribe 8. Tribe 8 is a pretty weird game. It's sort of like Mad Max Fury Road meets, gosh, I don't know, like Fallout, and it is super Canadian. It's just very weird. And I've got a couple of source books for that. Into the Outlands, Vimery, and I think, what is this? I think this was some maps. Yeah, pack of like maps and stuff. So I really enjoyed that. I played in a campaign for a while back in the early 2000s or late 90s. I'm not sure which. And I liked it a lot. Unfortunately, the campaign fell apart. I've never been able to get another game of it going, but here it sits still on my shelf, reminding me that, my collection is in flux as I'm trying to figure out what the best things are for me to hold on to and what things I can afford to let go of at this point, because what am I going to actually be able to run or play? I'm not a young man. I only have so many more years left in my life, and am I going to be able to actually get any of these games to the table? I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. But then I'll move on to one of my all-time favorite games, Ars Magica. I absolutely love this game. I played for only really 6 months. 6 months in one campaign, and then we tried to start a couple of others, and for various reasons, things fell apart. At the time, I lived in Maine, and everybody was leaving because living there wasn't great. And so every time we would get a campaign going, it seemed the person sort of at the center of it would get a better opportunity somewhere else and leave. But I loved the game. Absolutely loved it. We started playing, it was kind of a hodgepodge of this, the third edition, along with parts of the first and second edition. I didn't quite understand how it all came together, but when I joined the game, they already had this kind of duct tape and paperclip thing made. And while we were playing, the fourth edition came out. We kind of tried to switch to that, but fourth edition had some inherent problems. I think that they tried to get back to the setting proper, and I think they did a good job with that, but there were some mechanical things in there. My memory of it is that the physical combat section, which granted isn't necessarily what the game is about, but it still happens, and my memory of it is that the physical combat just did not work, or it didn't work as well as we had done with previous stuff. Anyway, so the third and the fourth edition, I have a bunch of books for that, and then I have a few books for the fifth edition. I really like what fifth edition did with stuff. I found the basic book to be much more readable and much more understandable than some of the previous editions. I think that I could actually feel comfortable running Ars Magica out of the 5th edition book in a way that I don't feel I would have been comfortable with the previous versions. That said, unfortunately, the reality of the books, they're well produced, they're very nice, but they are not cheap and they're not necessarily super easy to get a hold of, so I don't have a lot of them, because I just have not been able to, considering I haven't played this game in almost 30 years, I have not been able to justify spending more money on a game that I'm not likely to be able to run, and certainly no sign of being able to play anytime soon. So this is what I've got so far. I don't know. Maybe I'll try to acquire some of the other books at some point. There's one on the Basque country in northern Spain and southern France that I would like to get, because if I ever run it, that's where I have planned to set my game. Anyway, Ars Magica, great game. 5th edition, I think best version. There it is. Next I have what unfortunately turns out to be a rare and difficult to get a hold of game, Prince Valiant. I really like what I've read about this. When I read through the book, I feel the system is really good. I like it a lot, but it's out of print. The Book of Adventures is like stupidly expensive to try to track down, and I think it's really too bad. I hope maybe one day, because it is Greg Stafford, I'm hoping maybe Chaosium will somehow be able to get the rights to it and publish it again. I don't know if that's likely to ever happen, but that would be nice because I really think it's a cool game. And then I've got The Princess Bride. I have some problems with this game. I really want to bring this to the table. I want to play this with some friends of mine who are maybe not as into RPGs. I think it'll be fairly approachable for them. I have some problems with the way the book is organized. I find actually making your own characters to be very difficult and overcomplicated because they split character creation into 3 chapters in a really awkward, weird way. It feels like it is meant to be played with their pre-generated characters, and that's it. If you want to make your own, good luck. At least that's how it felt for me, trying to sit down and actually roll up a character for it. I found it to be an extremely difficult thing to do. So thank goodness it comes with pre-generated characters, but maybe I don't want to play those characters. Anyway, moving on, I've got the Indiana Jones, World of Indiana Jones from West End. Never actually run it, never played it. I have a whole bunch of books for it, so I really should at some point. Raiders of the Lost Ark, one of my all-time favorite movies, super foundational for me as a person. So I really should probably, at one point or other, dip into this game. It's West End. I don't know if it uses D6. I feel like it used Masterbook, but I could be wrong on that. Does it jump right out and tell me if it's Master? It does say it's Masterbook. And I don't think I've ever actually used Masterbook. I feel like it's similar to D6, but I don't know for sure. I know it had something to do with cards. Anyway, I've not tried it. After Indiana Jones and the several supplements for that, I have another one that I have owned forever and wanted to play forever, but have never gotten to the table, and that is Space 1889, and multiple supplements for that here on the shelf. It is Proto Steampunk. I think that this was one of the first games to really dip into that alternate 1890s science fiction that eventually evolved into the steampunk genre, and unfortunately all that became when it was sort of co-opted by goths and became a whole weird thing. But I really like this retro future setting a lot. It's GDW, so like a lot of GDW games, it feels like it was half of a war game with pieces of a RPG tacked on to it. And consequently, the system is of no interest to me whatsoever. I found it like, my old statement, which no longer makes any sense to people because we don't have stereos, but it felt like reading stereo instructions. It made very little reasonable sense to me about how it would play on the table while reading it. My thought would probably be to use basic role-playing because it's a very versatile system, and with Call of Cthulhu, especially with Gaslight, you already have all the material you need to switch over to 1889 and run this alternate past, really, alternate timeline. I think great setting, again. And one day I will get a chance to actually play it. I wanted to do before I even knew it was called a sandbox, I wanted to run a sandbox-style campaign of it because I just think it would be great. It looks like I have some other material for it here. What is this? Oh, a couple of weird ones. Baron Munchausen, The Extraordinary Adventures of Baron Munchausen, which is like a game about making up crazy stories in the Munchausen style. And then this one, Puppet Land. I don't really remember what this was about, but I feel like, yes, it had an other side. There was Power Kill. And my memory of this, and I could be totally off, is this would be like you would play a session of a game and then you would plug Power Kill into it and explain how the game was actually some hallucination of somebody going nuts or something. I think that's what it was about. I don't know. I bought a lot of odd and experimental games back in the 90s and early 2000s. This is John Tynes. This is several people, including John Tynes. I bought a lot of weird and experimental games, and many of them, unfortunately, I never got a chance to try. So next up, Tales from the Loop, one of my favorite newer games. This is from Free League. It is based on the art of Simon Stålenhag. It is a retro 80s and 80s that never was, sort of a science fiction, post-utopian 80s nostalgia all mixed together. It's really good stuff. I got a chance to run that at the beginning of the pandemic. I really enjoyed it. I would very much like to revisit it at some point. I really want to try one of their mystery landscapes, which again is their sort of version of a sandbox game. Very cool stuff. Tossed in here because I don't have anywhere else for it right now. I have an Elric graphic novel, The Ruby Throne. This is the first of a series that got translated, I think, from French. It is a really great take on the Elric stories that I think captures something that even Moorcock didn't get into, the real horror and decadence of the Melniboné people, whatever. And I think that if I were to run an Elric game, I would definitely use this version of Elric and his people, because it's so twisted and dark and scary, and I think really fits who they are. His people were not good. He's coming from an evil empire for all intents and purposes. This evil empire that has faded in its last days, and not something to be looked up to. So anyhow, I have a couple of supplements for the game Elric with exclamation mark. I actually unloaded my copy of Stormbringer. I decided I only needed one version of a game I wasn't playing, so I let go of Stormbringer and kept Elric, but I do still have a couple of Stormbringer supplements that I may or may not hold on to. I've heard Demon Magic is very good. So, it's another one of those games I've owned for a really, really, really long time and have never played, like Hawkmoon. Connected also because it's an Eternal Champion. I have that here. Never played it. Never played any version of Elric or Hawkmoon, and I would like to at some point. Up next, I have Trail of Cthulhu. I'm always interested in variations of Call of Cthulhu and in ways to make my Call of Cthulhu game better and more interesting. So there was a lot about Trail of Cthulhu that sounded very interesting to me. I keep saying the word interesting, sorry. And I bought it, and it didn't click. I need to play it. I need to try it. I mentioned before that I have have read a different Gumshoe game that really boiled the system down, and I think that the Gumshoe system is pretty strong. But as executed in Trail of Cthulhu, it felt a little bit much. And I was trying to figure out, I couldn't find out a reason or figure out a reason why I would use Trail of Cthulhu instead of Call of Cthulhu, which I am already more familiar with and I feel like would get me to the same destination. So who knows? But along with that, I picked up Eternal Lies, which has garnered a lot of positive buzz as being one of the great Lovecraftian campaigns. So at some point I'm going to read it. I bought it because I saw the collector prices were going insane, and I was able to find a copy of it for a non-collector price, but it went pretty much right onto the shelf, and I have not looked at it since I got it. Also ended up picking up Out of Space. I believe I got this relatively inexpensively, and one of the reasons that I wanted it has several different adventures in it, but there's a World War I adventure, and I have often thought about running sort of preamble adventures for Call of Cthulhu campaign involving the characters and their time in the war, because I figure so many Call of Cthulhu characters will have the shadow of the war hanging over them. And I know there's a World War I adventure in there, so we'll see. Next up, I've got Eldritch Skies. This says on the back that it is the, I think, Unisystem version. I can't remember. It says it's for one of those type of systems, Cortex or Unisystem something. But it's actually the Savage Worlds version. I don't care. I've checked out Savage Worlds. It seems just fine, but if I were going to run this, I would probably, again, just use Call of Cthulhu because I am familiar with it and it works very well. But this specifically focuses on the science fiction side of Lovecraft. Lovecraft obviously is considered to be a horror writer, sort of, quote-unquote, the father of modern horror, but a lot of his stuff, even a lot of his horror stuff, can very easily be read as science fiction. Cosmic horror is almost by its nature a science fiction type story, and this one really leaves off the more gothic-y horror elements and boils it down to the science fiction, and then postulates an alternate 20th century where the government got a hold of Mythos tech and has now started to explore space, and it's the space of Lovecraftian horror. So there's lots of strange dangers out there. Just have the basic role-playing little quick start rules. You can get this pretty cheap online if memory serves. I would very much like to get the full version of this, but it is currently out of print, and I don't believe it is coming up anytime soon on Chaosium's reprint and redo of their various games. I think it is on their list to do, but not anytime soon. Anyway, basic role-playing, this game that got me started. I love it, but I don't have my original versions of the game. I don't know what happened to those. I think I gave them away years and years ago, and this is now all that I have other than the actual other games that use it. So up next, I have a free RPG Day Dune supplement from last year, and finally Dune, which was a gift from a friend not too long ago, and I have not even looked at it yet. I will look at it soon, because Dune is my favorite novel, and is a setting that I have been fascinated with for a long time, and I think would be really rich for some game exploration. And I have heard positive things about the new Dune system, so we'll see how that goes. All right, well, that's this shelf, and I'll be off to talk about another shelf at some point, and I might even be able to get the tripod working on the next one. We'll see. Take care.